When I was 9, I had a terrible revelation. The Hardy Boys were having a lot more fun than Nancy Drew. And it wasn't fair. Girls need role models too. Well, fortunately, things have changed since then. And now there are lots of role models for girls, and especially great role models for Jewish girls. So we're going to sing about those role models so we understand the need for what I'm about to tell you. Bella Absent, Barbara Boxer, Diane Justice Baker, Dingsburg, Kagan, you couldn't call has-beens. Duchess Kate was once a long shot, but a Jew she's never been. What ain't we got? We ain't got queens. But there is one queen who could save the situation. Please include her in your Purim celebration. No. Rule Judea on her own. Let me tell her the news. She's the reason they're all still Jews. She's the reason we're all still Jews. Well, when I tell people that I've written a historical novel called Queen of the Jews, people always say, oh, it must be about Queen Esther. But it isn't. Because, unfortunately, and people are crushed when I tell them this, there never was a Jewish queen of Persia. According to the Adele Berlin, a scholar, the book of Esther is a comic novel in the Greek style, written clearly by a Jew, but it never happened. And so,
say it isn't so.
Say it isn't so. But fortunately,
you mean there is no Esther?
That's what she
there
means.
never was an Esther.
You mean and no Mordecai?
And no Mordecai.
Oh, I don't believe it. That's not fair. I've never heard of anything. That's blasphemy.
But fortunately, there was a real Jewish queen of the Jews. Her name was Queen Salome Alexandra, and she ruled Judea in the 1st century BCE. People in Judea called her Shalom Zion, and the Queen of the Peace of Zion, and you will hear why. The fictional Esther and the real Shalom Zion have, unfortunately for them, some amazing similarities. First of all, neither one was in a dream marriage. I mean, would you want to get a husband by having him run a Miss Persia contest and pick you out of the lineup?
They do it on TV.
And would you want him to bring to his bedroom a different woman every night for 11 months before he decides on you?
Was he rich?
Was he rich?
He was rich. That's true.
I can handle that.
Okay. Well, Shalom Zion's was a political marriage. At that time, the party of the wealthy and the priests, which was the Sadducees, and the party of the rabbis, who were just beginning to get a little momentum, was the Pharisees. And John Hyrcanus, who was the high priest, thought he could resolve the problem by marrying his son to the sister of the most prominent rabbi of the time, Rabbi Shimon ben Shetta. But it didn't work for a couple of reasons. First, her husband died after being king for only a year, and you have to read my book to find out the mysterious circumstances of his death. But then she had a dilemma. If she wanted to remain queen, and who, after a little taste of palace life, wouldn't want to remain queen, she had to marry the next brother in line for the throne. There were problems with that. First of all, She was 37. He was 22. What 22-year-old young man wants to marry someone old enough to be his babysitter, or worse, his mother? The second problem was even more difficult. He was in jail, and she was the one who had put him there. But she had known him when he was a very small child. His name was Alexander Janaeus, and everybody who knew him well called him Yanai, like Johnny, Yonatan. So even the people called him that, and not always with great respect. But here she is. She's on the stairway to the dungeon, and she's about to let him out and marry him. The stairwell to the dungeon was dark, and it smelled of mildew. Torchlight shone on Yanai, clad only in dirty breeches, sitting on the damp floor of the cell. "Alexander Janaeus," said my guard. "Stand! Her Royal Highness Salome Alexandra, Queen of Judea, wishes to speak with you." "What a surprise," said Yanai, rising slowly to his feet. "The Holy Queen has descended into the pit to greet the viper." He gestured around the bare stone cell. "Please excuse my surroundings, Your Highness. I wish I could offer you a chair." I ignored his sarcasm. I'd made my choice. "I'm going to release you from prison," I said, "and crown you king." "How kind of you," said Yanai, "but only if you accept my terms." "You're the queen, I'm the prisoner," shrugged Yanai. "What are the terms?" "I will remain queen. In fact, not only in title. You will be called king and high priest, but I will rule the land of Judea." Yanai snorted. "You are tough. Is that all your terms?" "One more. You must marry me and give me children." "You want me to marry you, old woman?" said Yanai. "You think you can still bear children?" "Children should be no problem," I said. "I'm not sure I can bear you." Both of these queens were married to men with huge appetites for two things: women and drink. As you probably know, when Esther wanted to point out to her husband that all the Jews of the Persian Empire were about to be massacred by her husband's second in command, in order to get his attention, what did she have to do? She had to invite him to a drinking party. And then she had to invite him to another drinking party. And when she finally got his attention, she could change things. Well, her husband was a drunken fool, but Shalom Sion's husband was something a bit worse. He was a vicious, mean, and unpredictable drunk. So here's what happened at the Feast of Circumcision for their second child. And this is in the Talmud, by the way. At first, the wine just made him jolly and a bit argumentative. When I commented on the excellence of the lamb, Yanai insisted that goat was better. "Whatever you say," I agreed. "You're just saying that," said Yanai. "You like lamb because it has no flavor, like everything about this court. I like goat because it's tough. Even when it's roasted, it kicks back." "Whatever you say," I repeated. "We should take a vote of the Sanhedrin," said Yanai, his voice rising. "Why not just call in the acting high priest and ask him?" I suggested. He eats from the meat of the sacrifices, just as we do. How could I have made such a stupid suggestion? Yanai loathed the acting high priest, Issachar. Issachar veiled his hands in silk. When Issachar heard Yanai's question, he dismissed it with a flick of his white-gloved hand. "It is obvious," said the acting high priest. "If goat were better, it would be brought as the daily offering." Yanai thumped the table with his fist. "Look at the way he flicks his wrist at us," he growled. "Obviously, he has no respect for royalty." He turned to the guard standing beside him. "Take this man," he said, grabbing Issachar's sleeve, "and cut off his impudent right hand." "Yanai," I protested, "you asked for his opinion." "His opinion was wrong," said Yanai. So obviously, each of these women, there was a certain amount of danger that was part of being a queen in these circumstances. When when Mordecai told Esther, "Go talk to the king and change this decree," Esther said, "I can't go to the king. I can only go when he calls me. And if I come when he doesn't call me, unless he holds out his royal scepter," and I leave you to consider what that might mean, I'll have my head cut off. Mordecai said, "You know, if you don't do it, you're going to die anyway. And somebody else will save the Jews." So she said, she had a flair for the dramatic. "If I die, I die." But for Shalom Zion, a real woman living with a real alcoholic, every day was a new danger. You know, you never knew what to expect from this man. Yanai hated the Pharisee rabbis. I think he was probably illiterate because he hadn't grown up in Jerusalem. He'd grown up in the Galilee in a barracks. So whatever the reason, he started a 6-year civil war against the Pharisees. He crucified 800 Pharisees in the public square in Jerusalem. And behind his back, Shalom Zion was helping the Pharisees. She remained a loyal follower. She got them safe houses in Alexandria. She found caves. And she knew where all of them were when finally her husband died of his hard drink. But in the meantime, you may think she was foolish rather than brave, but she went down to the battlefield and tried to persuade them Jews should not be fighting Jews. Of course, you know, once a man has a sword in his hand, no offense, trying to stop him from fighting is probably, let's say, it's overly optimistic. So at the end of the war, the one thing Yanai was good at was being a soldier, so he kept fighting. He doubled the size of the land. But eventually he died right in the middle of a battle. Shalom Zion went to the battle site and led the troops, secured a victory. But she secured something else. She secured a written document from this dying man that said she should be queen of Judea. This was at a time when a woman wasn't allowed to make a vow without her husband's permission. But somehow she got back and persuaded the people, and maybe the Sanhedrin, that she should rule alone, even though she had 2 sons in their 20s who were very eager to get on the throne. What did she do with her 9 years? She ruled until her death. She ascended the throne at age 64, so I have nothing to worry about, and ruled until she was 73.
married at 70.
But
37.
what did she do with that time? Well, first of all, she built a great defense, forts all around the edge of what was now Judea. She hired mercenaries. She sent the guys back home, the Jewish guys, to farm, which was about time because Judea was starving. And then there were no more wars. This was after 100 years of wars, from the Maccabees until she took the throne. So that was in itself an accomplishment and earned her the name Shalom Zion. But she also expanded the rights of women. This she had to do, as women have for centuries had to do, through the men that she could influence, namely her brother, because all Jewish law was interpreted by the rabbis. But she succeeded in making sure that divorced women would get their payment and wouldn't leave penniless no matter what tricks their husbands tried. And once these laws were in place, she, being the sole ruler, could put the power of the state behind enforcing them. She was very pious. She built mikveh pools all over the land. And the most important thing she did was bring the rabbis back and have them reestablish their schools. So this was the model that Christianity and Islam built on, a teacher and disciples. It took another 2,000 years before women were allowed to become the students, but one thing at a time. So I'm sure, come up here, ladies. Hello. I'm sure that Esther, like my client, Shalom Zion, would have done all these things. She would have commanded troops, she would have gone to battlefields, she would have fought for women's rights, she would have negotiated treaties. But Esther had a problem, which is once she'd been in the king's bed, she wasn't allowed out of the harem again. Even when she wanted to talk to her cousin Mordecai, she had to send messengers. So she had it in her, but it didn't necessarily come out. And now we're going to sing another song so that you can start getting ready for the ultimate vote about which queen, the fictional or the real, should be queen of the new millennium.
And this is once there was a pretty queen?
Yeah, but are you going to say?
Oh, yes, okay. And now, sisters, it's time to meet our contestants. In this corner, the 5'1" barrel of fun, known by everyone, though entirely fictional, Esther Ponine Palin. And then, in this corner, the real hysterical queen of Judea, but who's ever heard of her, Shalom Zion Yiddishekup Clinton. First, in the spirit of modern Jewish sisterhood, we invite you to sing 2 songs in praise of our 2 queens. The first song is to the tune of "Oh, Once There Was a Wicked, Wicked Man," which is called "Once There Was a Pretty, Pretty Queen."
Jewish women and girls.
Now you might say, well, what do I, this is a historical fiction, so what's the difference? But there was a historical source, and his name was Josephus. He was a Roman Jewish historian. But unfortunately, he didn't like women very much, and he thought it was truly outrageous that a woman would rule Judea's throne, doing what a woman ought not to do, as he put it. And so she had no concept of what was good or right, even though she was very pious and the people loved her and all the people named their kids after her, their daughters. So we're just about to have our momentous vote. And sisters, and brothers, before we vote, I want to ask you a question. Which would you rather have? A queen who can run a country, keep roads paved and mikvah pools filled, build strong defense without making war, establish an educational system which girls might join within the next 2 millennia?
So you're stacking the deck.
Negotiate treaties and expand the rights of women, or a queen, sorry about this, who can win a beauty contest without wearing makeup.
She did wear makeup. They prepared her for a whole year.
And oil.
Right. But so anyway,
She saved the life of community.
I'm just posing the question. It has nothing to do with the fact that I will soon be signing this book. And we have one more song to sing.
Yes. Okay,
It's the third song.
The third song is to the tune of Gilbert and Sullivan's Modern Major General. Even if you haven't heard of it, you'll understand it quickly, okay? And we're singing I Am the Very Model of an Ancient Persian Beauty.
I'm the very model of an ancient Persian beauty queen. I'm pale when I go out, but in the throne room all my beauty seen. When my husband calls for me, I never ask where he has been. 'Cause I'm the very model of an ancient Persian beauty queen. The great descendant had a seat on old Judea's throne. He was my husband, but a dummy, never could he rule alone. So the elections of my armies to clear passions number 3. I got to hear in me and out to mine and all the sea. I gave a party for the king and there revealed who Haman's not. I saved the Persian Jews in a scenario like Camelot. We celebrate my victory with brothers and a lot of noise. But girls are just like me and there are lots more choices for the boys. Didn't know the blessings had to call a rep to lunch with them. For backing other rabbis, I determined to exact a fee. So that's part of a divorce decree. Jews over humor against prejudice in foreign lands. I fought the priests and academics to find a faith that understands. Temple to be neat because we study and we know Torah, which teaches how to be a nation, whatever religions we are. So, your favorite queens to launch the new millennium, or choose us both with Jewish things and their calls to many more. So vote for your favorite queens to launch the new millennium, or choose us both with Jewish queens. How can there be too many of them? Oh, wait, you have to wait for the vote.
I will put it down.
Vote.
Yes. Okay. Sisters, brothers, this is a one-party shul. So, you get to vote for both queens by making as much noise as you can with your grabbers. And afterwards, if you wish, the author will sign and sell you her historic novel, The Queen of the Jews, where you can learn about the real queen, Shalom Zion. Cat calls are welcome, but no rotten tomatoes, please.
And no eggs.
Grabbers ready?
Which one?
Okay, on the count of 1, 2, 3, who of you feel that Esther Pudding Palin is the queen of the new millennium? Come on, show me 1 or 2 of you feel it. Okay, all right, yeah. Okay, and who of you feel that Shalom Tzion Yiddish right, the real historic queen of Judea should be the Jewish queen for the new millennium? Okay, sounds to me like it's sort of, yeah.
We need to
Shalom saying,
vote.
but we do need, right, you,
Right.
yeah, but, good
I'm
job.
done.